Asalaamu Alaikum, everyone, and welcome to another session. And this time round, we're going to talk about Narnia. And this is basically my view on Narnia. And it's a bit mixed, but yeah, let's just get started. So, why did I choose to talk about Narnia? Well, it kind of began when my parents basically gave me like a £20 note, and they were expecting me to get like clothes when I was younger, but instead, I just stumbled upon like a shop, like a bookshop, and then I just bought all of the Narnia books, and that's when I started reading Narnia, like just out of random. And then when I was younger as well, I saw the movies, and they were really, really well made movies as well. And to the point where when I was younger, I actually I saw inside my wardrobe. Well, I kind of did two things. I saw like inside my own wardrobe, thinking that maybe Narnia is real. And then when I figured that like my wardrobe didn't really look like the wardrobe in the movie, um, I kind of like was checking my like other doors around the house, especially like the boiler room, because that kind of looked like really mysterious. And yeah, I was kind of disappointed when I didn't find Narnia, but yeah, there's that. And then it kind of like um, made me want to believe in like mythical creatures as well. Narnia was like a gateway to a lot of mythical creatures. For example, like centaurs and phoenixes and things like that. So Narnia was kind of like the first set of stories where I was introduced um, to fantasy, and it's kind of the reason why I love fantasy to this day. So it has like a really long history for me, especially. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna summarize basically all of the books, like books 1 to 7, and then I'll kind of analyze a bit in a bit more detail after that. But yeah, so let's start with number. I'm going with publication order because that's the true order instead of the actual chronological order. But yeah, so the first book is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the most classic, I would say, the best-selling one, the one that everyone knows. And yeah, the summary is four siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensey, are evacuated from London during World War II to live in a country house owned by Professor Diggory Kirk. And while exploring the house, the younger sibling, Lucy, discovers a portal to the magical land of Narnia inside an old wardrobe. And there she meets a faun named Tumnus, Mr. Tumnus, who reveals that Narnia is trapped in an eternal winter by the White Witch Jadis. And this book kind of sets the precedent for all of the other books, and it introduces the world which will span all of the other books as well. And it discusses themes like redemption and tyranny, and also spiritual imagination, which I will touch upon in the character of Lucy. So the second book is Prince Caspian, and the summary for this is the Pevensey siblings are magically summoned back to Narnia from a train station in England, and although it's been 1 year for them, over 1,000 years has gone by in Narnia, and their once glorious kingdom is now under oppressive rule of the Telmarines, and everything and everyone that they knew before in book 1 are basically dead. And yeah, the rightful heir, Prince Caspian, flees his murderous uncle, King Miraz, and blows on Queen Susan's ancient horn to call for help. And this is when the Pevensey siblings are introduced to the story as well. And the book kind of sets the character up for Prince Caspian, and especially in like the third book as well, in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. and it discusses themes of religious revival and environmentalism and also imperialism as well. So, sorry, the third book is called The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and this kind of is a unique story because it's not really set in the land, it's set in like a seafaring, it's a seafaring odyssey, mostly taking place on the sea. And Edmund and Lucy Pevensey, along with their insufferable cousin Eustace Scrubb, who's actually my favorite character in all of Narnia, probably, um, are pulled through a painting into the Narnian Ocean, and they're rescued by King Caspian X, who is Prince Caspian in the Prince Caspian book, and they're like on board the Dawn Treader, and Caspian is on a quest to find the seven lost lords who were loyal to his father but were exiled by his uncle Miraz. And the book sets the character of Eustace Scrubb for the fourth book, The Silver Chair, also my favorite book, and it discusses themes of temptation, transformation, and spiritual hunger, which we find in Reepicheep. So the fourth book, my favorite one, basically the adventure kind of moves away from the Pevensey siblings to focus on Eustace and his schoolmate Jill Pole, who is also my favorite character. Um, the story is a quest for a lost heir set in the backdrop of like a psychological manipulation, and the book kind of talks about like the importance of holding on to truth. And basically what happens is to escape bullies at their school, which is called, funnily enough, Experiment House, Eustace and Jill stumble into Narnia, and Aslan gives Jill four signs that she must memorize and follow to find the missing Prince Rilian, who is actually Prince Caspian's son. And the key themes of this is like obedience and guidance, the nature of belief, which is in Puddleglum, and it kind of talks about how bad schooling systems are as well, and also remembering and following the signs of faith. So the next book is The Horse and His Boy. I love this book too. It's one of my favorites, and it's a unique story because it's actually a spin-off and it doesn't have any characters in the main plot who are based from our world. So there's no Pevensey siblings, there's no Jill or Eustace. And the story is that like a young boy named Shasta is about to be sold into slavery in the southern land of the Kalomen, and he meets a talking Narnian horse named Bree, and they both decide to flee north to Narnia to freedom. And the book discusses themes about providence versus luck, nobility and identity, and also it's kind of like a biblical narrative tale similar to the Moses story, but we'll touch on that in the coming slides. So the next book after that one is The Magician's Nephew, and this is like a prequel novel to the Narnian world, and it's set in Edwardian England, in London, and it goes through Professor Diggory Kirk and his friend Polly Plummer. They're both tricked by Diggory's uncle into testing these magic rings, and the magic rings are kind of like a portal to different worlds. It's called like the wood between the worlds, and it's kind of like a transit zone between pools of different worlds, and they basically go into several one of them, and one of them that they go into is like a prequel to Narnia, which is called Chan, and then they discover Narnia as well in this book. And it also talks about the origin of the wardrobe too. And yeah, the book discusses themes about temptation, good and evil. It introduces the White Witch, even though she wasn't called the White Witch then, and it touches upon like choice and curiosity as well. So the final book is called The Last Battle, and it's kind of like an apocalyptic conclusion. It's a story of deception and the end of the physical world as we know it in Narnia, and the transition to a deeper reality. So what happens is like a clever ape named Shift finds a lion skin and forces a donkey to wear it, and he pretends to be Aslan, and he uses the false Aslan to enslave the Narnians and forge an alliance with the Narnian rivals who are the Kalamen. And the themes of this book is deception, faith versus skepticism, and the afterlife. So in the Narnian, like Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian, and a little bit they touch on in The Horse and His Boy, we see the Pevensey siblings, and the eldest of the siblings is Hiking Peter. His name is really cool, Hiking Peter the Magnificent. And I think what he represents is the weight of duty and just doing what needs to be done. Like, he's the oldest of the siblings and he takes it upon himself to protect all of his younger siblings, like Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, and also like anyone under his rule or his care. He really takes like he really actually cares about them and takes his time to address their concerns. And during the last battle of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, he goes into battle alone with Edmund, despite being like a child and being told that Aslan was dead. And Aslan was kind of like their last hope. Everyone was gearing up towards fighting with Aslan. But when he dies, everyone is like skeptical of whether they're gonna win or not. But him, he kind of takes it upon himself to be that leader, even though he's really skeptical of his own leadership and whether or not he's ready to lead. But he does so anyway, even though that he and his fellow Narnians might die in the process. So in that sense, he's really brave and he just does what needs to be done. And he also fights King Miraz, Prince Caspian's uncle, who is kind of like the false king of the Telmarines of Narnia. And he fights 1-to-1 with him, even though he's a far older, far more experienced man than who Peter is. And he does that just to bide time for the Narnians and for basically Lucy to get Aslan to help them in the battle. So yeah, that's like another reason why he kind of really just makes the tough decisions. And even though he might not like it, he does lead, and he just does what he has to do basically, even though it's kind of like sacrificial for him. And the character of Peter is actually kind of like his namesake, Simon Peter, who is a apostle for Jesus, and he's kind of the second in command after Jesus, peace be upon him. And he's like really level-headed and a humble leader. And for example, instead of being jealous that Prince Caspian is now kind of king of Narnia, even though he was king of Narnia before, he really encourages Prince Caspian to lead the throne. He doesn't really care that Prince Caspian is the leader or he's taking his thunder, but he really encourages him to fight back for his throne. And he also diffuses arguments in the last battle where everyone was arguing about Susan's position on Narnia, but he's kind of the one who says, let's forget about it, let's move on and just do what needs to be done, basically. That's kind of his essence. That's why I really respect him. I think he's my favorite of the siblings for the Pevensies. So King Edmund, everyone else's favorite, he's the redeemed. So he starts out as distant compared to his other siblings, and it kind of paved the way for him to betray them under the White Witch's power. Everyone says that he does it for Turkish delight, which is kind of true, but not really true, because the White Witch in the book, she um, kind of poisons the Turkish delight, and that's why Edmund has this type of obsession with the witch, is because of the Turkish delight that's been bewitched by her. And yeah, but after witnessing her oppression towards him and other innocent Narnians, he redeems himself by doing the ultimate sacrifice, where he basically makes a wedge between him and the Narnians and the White Witch, and he destroys the White Witch's main power by breaking her wand, who was turning everyone else into statues. So that was her most powerful weapon, and he breaks that, but to his detriment because he gets stabbed in the process. But yeah, just that choice kind of redeems him. And he also is the first to believe in Lucy in Prince Caspian, while everyone else is kind of skeptical and they don't believe in Lucy. And he kind of says that, oh, I've never, like, um, when I didn't believe in Lucy, I looked like a fool, basically, when he was younger. And now he's a changed person and he's willing to believe in Lucy because he knows that Lucy knows everything. So, yeah, he kind of like um, cements his redeemed nature in that choice. And also, props to him, he goes alone to King Miraz as a messenger during the war conflict, and to basically make a contract with them that Peter would fight Miraz on 1-to-1. So he's the messenger that's taking the message to like vie that option for them, which ends up happening. But he does it knowingly that he could get killed, because a lot of armies tend to kill messengers. But he makes that choice and he puts on a brave face and goes alone, completely alone, to the enemy. And yeah, he does that. And because he does that, um, Peter is able to fight King Miraz, and they're able to bide time for Aslan to save the Narnians, basically. So yeah, every choice he makes after that bad choice is kind of cements his sincerity of being redeemed. That's what I really respect about him. And he also is basically Peter the Just. That's his title. And the just is earned because he ultimately understands both sides of the story of sin and mercy. And having been a traitor himself, having done the sin himself, he's kind of uniquely equipped to judge others with more empathy, because Aslan judged him with empathy, and so did his brother after as well. So yeah, that's why he can judge with empathy instead of self-righteousness. And he also represents like grace and forgiveness, because he doesn't really earn his forgiveness at first. Aslan just forgives him, but because he just forgives him and Aslan kind of sacrifices himself to save him, he really respects that decision, and he respects Aslan so much that he knows that he needs to live up to it now. So Queen Lucy, she is one of my favorites too, just because what she represents, which I like a lot, and which is really not common in this day and age, which is spiritual imagination. So Lucy Pevensey is the emotional and spiritual heartbeat of Narnia, and she is the first to discover Narnia in the earthly world, for the earthly characters anyway. and is always the first to spot Aslan and always the first to believe in Aslan. And while her brothers handle swords and battle and law, Lucy handles the vision. She rarely fights, but because she's so young, but she handles the vision of Narnia, and she's basically the seer, who is the most closeness in proximity to Aslan, and she also remains the most resolute and consistent in her belief. And she thinks of Narnia and the belief in Aslan as a transcendent belief, like that transcends worlds, like across universes, basically, even her own world on Earth and also in Narnia itself. And she's the most proud in believing in this, unlike another character which I will get into. But she represents believing without seeing, and Lucy kind of struggle. Lucy's struggle in Prince Caspian kind of represents this, where she struggles because she knows that she sees Aslan, but no one believes her, and because no one believes her, she doesn't go to Aslan herself because she's too scared. But in that journey in Prince Caspian, it's her being brave enough to follow um, to follow by herself, by to follow what she believes in by herself. And she sees Aslan while others are blinded by their own grumbling and fatigue. And yeah, basically her challenge is to follow him alone in if necessary. And she also represents the desire for the divine. Lucy's relationship with Aslan is probably the most intimate relationship in Narnia. And while others kind of fear him, which is the right to fear him because he is all powerful. Well, he is powerful. Uh, Lucy fears. Lucy's fear is mixed with like a desperate longing for Aslan. So it's kind of respect and longing, and also a little bit of fear mixed in. And in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, she is tempted by a spell to make her look beautiful, but Aslan kind of steps in and reminds her that her values found in his love only, or should be found in his love, and not in the shadow of earthly validation or materialism. And Susan is actually a foil to this because she kind of represents the opposite. So Queen Susan is spiritual imagination's foil, so it's Lucy's foil. So from the very beginning, Susan is depicted as the logical sibling, and the professor actually points this out right in the beginning when they discuss Lucy's first experience of Narnia, and she thinks that she's gone delusional, basically. Um, but the professor says that she never lies, and Edmund is the one who always lies. So logically, Lucy should be right. And yeah, she's the most skeptical about adventuring into Narnia and saving Mr. Tumnus too. And Ed, compared to Peter and Lucy, I mean, um, she's kind of the most skeptical one. And in Prince Caspian, she doesn't believe in Lucy's vision of Aslan, and eventually is the last to see him. In the last battle, Susan completely dismisses Narnia, and she represents the soul that has been choked by the cares of the world and the materialism of the world, and views Narnia as a game they used to play when they were children. And she's essentially embarrassed by believing in Narnia and in Aslan, compared to her siblings who still believe in Aslan, and they discuss Aslan with so much sincerity, even when they're in their 20s. But Susan, she just says that, oh, it's a game that we used to play, and she no longer believes in Narnia. So Susan represents like a pseudo maturity, fearing the childlike wonder of imagination and the spiritual imagination of belief of what religion offers. And but she doesn't realize that that fear in itself, that fear of being immature, is a childish act itself. And she's kind of similar to the Lady of the Green Kirtle in The Silver Chair, where she believes in everything that she sees is what she believes in, and there's nothing more to it, basically. She believes what she sees is all that there is in the world, and there's nothing else. And her pursuit for beauty in the material world, like she chases after that instead. Susan in general, despite all of this, is kind of like is a kind and gentle character in the books and in the movies too. And C.S. Lewis's letters also mentioned that her journey of faith is kind of like his own. And C.S. Lewis was an atheist himself when he was younger, and but then returned to Christianity after that. And he also says that once a king or queen of Narnia, always a king or queen. So it's kind of alluded that Susan does eventually turn back, but her story is more complicated. So this is like a scene from the book. I'm going to read it out, and it kind of gives you a sense of how Susan thinks compared to how the others think. So, Sire, said Tyrion, when he had greeted all these, if I had read the chronicles aright, there should be another. Has not your majesty two sisters? Where is Queen Susan? My sister Susan, answered Peter shortly and gravely, is no longer a friend of Narnia. Yes, said Eustace, and whenever you've tried to get her to come and talk about Narnia, or do anything about Narnia, she says, what wonderful memories you have. Fancy you're still thinking about all those funny games we used to play when we were children. Oh, Susan, said Jill, she's interested in nothing nowadays except nylons and lipstick and invitations. She always was a jolly sight too keen on being grown up. Grown up indeed, said the Lady Polly. I wish she would grow up. She wasted all her school time wanting to be that age she is now, and she'll waste all the rest of her life trying to stay that age. Her whole idea is to race up on the silliest point in on the silliest time of one's life as quick as she can, and then stop there as long as she can. Well, don't let's talk about that now, said Peter. Look, here are some lovely fruit trees. So, yeah, that's the gist. So, other characters in the story, Puddleglum, who's in the silver chair, he's kind of the embodiment of being steadfast. Well, both of these characters, Reepicheep and Puddleglum. Puddleglum is really steadfast in that even though there's no evidence of Aslan ever existing in the silver chair, yet he still believes. He says, all you've been saying is quite right. I shouldn't wonder, but there's one more thing to be said. Even so, I am on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I am going to live like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't a Narnia, even if there isn't any Narnia. So he's making that professional declaration that I'm gonna believe, even though everyone is saying that there isn't anything to believe in. Similar to Reepicheep, he really longs to go to Aslan's country. He longs for Aslan in the entire books that he's in. So he says, my own plans are made. While I sail east in the dawn treader. When she fails me, I paddle east in my coracle. When she sinks, I shall swim east with my four paws. And when I can swim no longer, if I have not reached Aslan's country or a shot over the edge of the world into some vast cataract, I shall sink with my nose to the sunrise. So there's a couple of biblical narratives within these stories. Well, there's a lot because allegorically speaking, uh, C.S. Lewis really made it a point to add Christianity into his books. But these are the stories which are kind of really center in particular themes of biblical narratives. So the first one is the horse and his boy. I mean, yeah, it should say the horse and his boy, not the boy and his horse. Anyway, um, the Moses archetype. So Shasta's origin, especially. So Shasta, the main character, the boy in the book. Um, Shasta's life closely mirrors the biblical story of Moses. For example, like the Nile versus the sea, just as a baby Moses, peace be upon him, was set adrift in a basket to escape death, Shasta, or Prince Kor, who he was before, was set adrift in a boat, following a prophecy that he would save Archenland from a great danger. And the prince and the slave, the two stories are kind of inverse parallels. So Moses, peace be upon him, was born a slave child but raised as a prince, while Shasta was born a prince and raised as a slave in a foreign land. And they both kind of face an exodus as well, where Shasta's flight from slavery of the Koloman across the desert to reach the promised land of Narnia in the north, and it kind of mirrors the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. And also, there's like an unseen guide, which is Aslan in the story. When Shasta is finally met by Aslan in the mountain pass, he complains about lions that have chased him, and Aslan reveals, I was the lion, explaining that he was the one who pushed the boat into the shore and also chased them together with Aravis. So some quotes from The Horse and His Boy, which I really like, is do not by any means destroy yourself, for if you live, you may yet have good fortune, but all the dead are dead alike. So this is kind of like a mental health kind of quote, which I think is really nice that he put it in there. And the second quote is basically the reveal. So he says, I was the lion, and as Shasta gaped with open mouth and said nothing, the voice continued, I was the lion who forced you to join with Aravis. I was the cat who comforted you among the houses of the dead. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you while you slept. I was the lion who gave the horses the new strength of fear for the last mile so that you should reach King Loon in time. And I was the lion you do not remember who pushed the boat in which you lay, a child near death, so that it came to shore where a man sat wakeful at midnight, to receive you. That quote itself gives me goosebumps. It's really well written, and it's really it just speaks to the biblical narrative of the Moses peace be upon him story. So the next biblical narrative is the magician's nephew, and the climax of the book kind of takes place in a walled garden, similar to the Garden of Eden, actually. And they kind of have this thing where, like, they have the apple of life, and Diggory is sent to retrieve an apple to protect Narnia. But on the sign of the gate, it warns, take of my fruit for others, or forbear, for those who steal or those who climb my wall shall find their heart's desire and find despair. And the tempter for getting the apple is Jadis, or the White Witch. And this was before she was the White Witch, but she played kind of the role of the serpent, and she already ate the apple herself, which is why she has eternal life. And fun fact, she's also part jinn, so there's that. She's jinn, giant, and human, kind of. But yeah, she has eternal life, and that turns her skin really like deadly white. And she symbolizes that she achieved her goal through sinful means and also wants others to follow her. She entices others to follow her. And the power of human curiosity is also kind of touched upon, and how the creator knows what man does not. So um, when the children find the world charn, which the witch is um, basically, everyone is in like a slumber in this world, which the witch made just to stop her sister or someone to rule her world. And what happens is that if you ring the bell, the witch wakes up. So, but there's like a riddle kind of, or like a rhyme near the bell, which says, "Make your choice, adventurous stranger, strike the bell and bide the danger, or wonder till it drives you mad, what would have followed if you had." And because of this rhyme, Diggory, the young professor, as a boy, he rings the bell and wakes up the witch because of his curiosity. So at the end, also, there's a really nice quote from the magician's nephew. Um, it kind of speaks about grief in a really nice way. So I'll read it out. Um, Up till then, he had been looking at the lion's great feet and huge claws on them. Now, in his despair, he looked up at his face. What he saw surprised him as much as anything in his whole life, for the tawny face was bent down near his own, and wonder of wonders, great shining tears stood in the lion's eyes. They were such big, bright tears compared to Diggory's own, that for a moment he felt as if the lion must really be sorrier about his mother than he was himself. So in The Magician's Nephew, his mother, Diggory's mother, is really ill, and his mother is all that he has left. And he was feeling really upset that his mother might very nearly die. And this was the scene where Aslan comforts him. So the next topic I want to talk about is in the last book, actually. It delves on charlatans in faith and in religion. So in the last battle, C.S. Lewis tackles the darkest and probably the most complex theme of the series, the corruption of faith from within. He does this by the character Shift, the ape, who's an ape. And Lewis provides like a critique on charlatanism, showing how spiritual language can be weaponized to enslave and deceive the followers. So, for example, the Narnians actually, a lot of the Narnians fall for the ruse of Shift because they're very wary and afraid. And Lewis warns that when people stop looking for the character of the divine and focus only on fear and rules and rituals, they become easy prey for the charlatans to prey on them, basically. And it also talks about intellectual bullying. So Shift, he's kind of really shifty. Um, he he tells everyone that he's the wisest, and he tells the Narnians that they're not clever enough to understand the new Narnia that he is going to create. And it kind of mirrors the real world of modernism, where experts use language to hide the fact that they're kind of abandoning the core truths of the religion itself. And we see this play out in the real world as well, where the people in power, even people in power for faith, they kind of manipulate and word differently what they want in order to make people follow them in a certain way. Um, it also talks about like a self-created hell. So the ape Shift, he kind of manipulates the dwarves into cynicism, and because of this, but because the dwarves are so hell bent on this idea of cynicism, that even in the afterlife, when they were given paradise, they still couldn't see it they were literally in paradise and they were still being cynical about it. And it kind of just shows that cynicism itself in religion can be blinding, basically. But yeah, like there's also the concept of the Antichrist, the false line of Puzzle the donkey, and also the Satan character Tash, which the Kalomen believe in, who are the enemies. But yeah, in the final stage of the book, um, it goes through the final sifting, where there's basically like a stable door, and it acts as a final judgment. Whoever goes through the door, like actually believes in Aslan, and a lot of them are afraid. You see some animals, they're actually atheists, like the cat. He doesn't believe in Aslan at all. Some people believe in like the false Aslan, and yeah, they basically, whoever goes through the door, they go into the afterlife, and the real seekers of Aslan recognize the fraud and eventually find the real Narnia, which is through the stable door. And those who serve the charlatan or their own cynicisms are left behind. So this is like I touched on like how Shift was really shifty, and he kind of uses like an intellectual way of shaping religious views. So here's a quote. I hear some of you are saying I'm an ape. Well, I'm not. I'm a man. If I look like an ape, that's because I'm so very old, hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it's because I'm so old that I'm so wise. And it's because I'm so wise that I'm the only one Aslan is ever going to speak to. He can't be bothered talking to a lot of stupid animals. He'll tell me what you've got to do, and I'll tell the rest of you, and take my advice and see you do it in double quick time, for he doesn't mean to stand any nonsense. So he uses the well-meaning Narnians as like a prey, and he feeds on their fear to make them listen to him and to enslave them. So in the last battle as well, we see the end of days and the afterlife. And the final stand in the last battle, in the end of the stories of the entire Narnian franchise, in the book series, it ends not in like a large battle like in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, or the Battle of Baruna in Prince Caspian. It's literally like a desperate attempt of a last hurrah, of a last victory, and it's very messy, and also they ultimately lose in a skirmish. I remember reading the book and being really confused, like, why are they losing? When did they win? Because it was like near the last pages and they're still losing. And I just thought that it would wrap up so fast that it wouldn't be good, but I didn't even expect them to lose, but they do lose in the battle. And Lewis uses this defeat to show that the old Narnians must pass to make room for the real Narnia, and the loss of the physical world is actually a requirement for the eternal one. So Tyrion, Eustace, and Jill, who are the last people to fight in the battle, their greatness of fighting in the end, like pretend fighting in the last days of the world in a losing battle, for them to be fighting shows their greatness, and it's really cemented in that, like High King Peter, like King Edmund, before them, they fight to the very end, even when they know that they can't win, and their loyalty to Aslan isn't dependent on a miraculous rescue in the physical battle, but instead of darkness, when they kind of get captured and they're forced to go through the stable doors as a sacrifice, they find themselves in the presence of in the presence of the seven friends of Narnia, the Pevensies and the others as well, like Polly and Diggory, discovering that the stable door was like a portal to paradise and not a cage or a sacrificial ritual. And the unicorn kind of sums up what it's like in the afterlife. And he says he stamped his right hoof on the ground and neighed, and then he cried, I have come home at last. This is my real country. I belong here. This is the land I have been looking for all my life, though I never knew it till now. The reason why we love the old Narnia is that it sometimes looked a little like this. Come further up and further in. So this is like the Islamic portrayal of Narnia. We mentioned on like the Kalomen, and now we're gonna mention who the Kalomen are because this is kind of heavy. So disclaimer, just a general disclaimer. C.S. Lewis's intention for Narnia was to be allegorically Christian. So right off the bat, we know that Aslan was supposed to mirror Jesus, peace be upon him, and his resurrection. So we already know that these beliefs in like the resurrection story of like especially the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where Jesus is resurrected again like Jesus in the Christian story. We know that these stories are gonna be like changed compared to in Islam. So right off the bat, we know that. But what C.S. Lewis does is add an extra thing. So what he does is blend Islamic stereotypes, mixing like Arab, Indian, and Turkish cultures when creating the Koloman, the race in his fantasy who oppose the Narnians. And they're basically a race who wear turbans and robes and have long beards and practice slavery and forced marriages, as seen in The Horse and His Boy. And they believe in this kind of satanic figure called Tash, who's kind of like a pagan religion. It's a pagan religion. Um, and that's depicted in the last battle, as we said before. So he kind of makes it seem like they're visually Muslim, but with paganism. And it's kind of weird in a way because it's like saying that how Muslims are kind of pagan, but we're not. That's literally uh, the most false thing that you can say about Islam, that it's a pagan religion. But anyway, these are, of course, like harmful stereotypes. And reading Narnia and watching back Narnia now as an adult has changed the way that I view Narnia itself. Even though Narnia, like I mentioned before, how Narnia was literally the reason why I got into fantasy as a kid. And I liked it so much that I actually believed in a world, in a separate world in my wardrobe. I would actually believe that that could be real. The hope of it could be real. I actually believed in that magic. And to view Narnia now, I feel a bit sad because the when I see the Koloman, I basically see people who look like me, and the way that they're depicted, they're not very. It's not very good. Let's just say that. Um, so when I see like the Narnians and those who support them, who are not white, i.e., Aravis in The Horse and His Boy, she's actually part of the Koloman race. She's brown. She has dark hair as well, but she runs away with Shasta, the boy who's a Narnian, and they kind of go to Narnia and they side with them instead. And everyone else who's a Narnian, they're white, and they're in the north, and they like are depicted as blonde or like that, stereotypically Western figures, while the Kolomen and the Telmarines too are depicted as brown, And just by doing that, it sets a precedent of people who look Muslim and who are brown. Even though Aslan's name is literally Turkish, I don't know how, but he still makes the Koloman very, very similar to Muslims and how they look. So but we see this as like kind of like black and white, but it kind of isn't, because um C.S. Lewis kind of adds an extra character which kind of messes this up. Emeth from the last battle is a character who's Kaloman, and he also wholeheartedly believes in Tash in earnest, and he's really sincere in his belief in the Satan god or whatever, Tash. And because of the sincerity of his belief, Emeth is actually granted paradise in the last sifting of Judgment's Day. He actually goes to paradise with the Narnians, with Lucy, with Peter, with Edmund. Anyone who's good, he's in that world. And Aslan says that all the service thou hast done to Tash, I account as a service done to me. So he explains that Tash is incapable of accepting any act that is truly good or beautiful, and those acts actually belong to Aslan. And because he was doing that so sincerely to Tash, what he was really doing is doing those deeds and believing in Aslan himself. So in a way, it's kind of inclusive that if you sincerely believe in your religion, C.S. Lewis thinks that you have a chance of going to paradise. So he adds that in as a character, as a Muslim character. But yeah, what do you think about fantasy in general being like this stereotypical of Muslims? Like you can see in these pictures that they are clearly Arab, Indian, Turkish, Muslim looking people. So this right here is Aravis. You can see that she's brown and she has dark hair, and she's covering her hair as well. And these people are wearing robes and turbans. And this right here is a character who actually I think gets arranged marriage. I'm not sure. That's Aravis's friend, but Aravis herself actually runs away from a forced marriage. But yeah, there's anyway. In conclusion, like time and again, I'm reminded how much we need Muslim fantasy, and while Narnia and fantasy in general have a lot of stereotypical depictions of Muslims and black and ethnic minorities, the stories itself can teach us good values. When you look at the story for what it's trying to do and what it's trying to say, in essence, it is good, but it just has that problematic thing where they depict us as bad, even though our morals are literally aligning with the good stuff, but they kind of forget about that. They just see the skin color and where we are located in the world, and they think that, oh, okay, they're the enemy, even though our beliefs are so similar, like at least in moral values anyway. But yeah, so watching and reading Narnia again, to be honest, I like I haven't said this, but Narnia also was something that I actually still watch with my parents, especially my dad. And I actually recently watched Narnia in Hindi because I happen to have a DVD which has a Hindi dub to Narnia. So he was like, my dad doesn't even understand English, but he still loves Narnia. And it's a movie where you don't even need to learn the language to understand what it says. That's how good it is. but I did watch it with him in Hindi. But even though that's not our main language, but it is similar. Um, I speak Bengali, so yeah. Um, but the fact that we could understand in like a deeper level like that shows how good it is. But and it shows how like universal the story is. But again, like it just having characters who are brown being the enemy, it just does something to you. And watching and reading Narnia again and again, I kind of watched it like 100 times maybe. Um, it just shows like how it should become a necessity that we as Muslims create our own tales and stories, and how we should draw from our own traditions and our own like Quranic stories or our own historical stories of our lands. And the lack of this storytelling agency in the Muslim community in the modern era, especially, is a reason why so many people, so many young people, from children like how I was, even till now, as a fantasy lover, um, it kind of like we have to draw so much from Western media because there isn't anything in the Muslim community to do it. And although that the Western media for fantasy, like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Narnia, can be good, have elements of good, majority of them reinforce intentional or unintentional stereotypes of us. But yeah, like we also don't need like other people to write our own stories and exoticize our stories too. For example, June, which I really hate about June, because that's a Western guy telling our stories for us in a really weird way. Like, even though it has like Islamic elements, but that's kind of like a charlatanism kind of parading as us, but not really us, and not involving us like the movies as well. I don't know of any Muslim character in or person acting in those movies, especially for the main characters as well. So yeah, there's that too. So that's kind of a reason why I myself I really enjoy writing fantasy. I really enjoy writing fantasy because of this reason as well, because I see so many stories based in like the medieval aesthetic. I mean, when I was younger, I used to really I used to really think how how unbothered I was writing about Muslim stories or Muslim like themed or centered like background worlds and stuff like that. I wasn't really bothered about doing that, but now as I'm older, I kind of see the value in it a lot because of the lack of the content that we have right now. When I was younger, I used to really shy away from writing Muslim centered or Muslim themed or stories with Muslim content like values, moral values, or have like Islamic background histories, or like even for inspiration or aesthetically Islamic. I used to shy away from that, thinking that no, I'm gonna write medieval. I love the Legend of Arthur, of Merlin, the Crusaders, the I don't know, like that type of aesthetic I used to be really into just because I see all of these other fantasy stories and they have that type of element to them. So when I saw like themed with like Muslims or whatever, I used to think that it's kind of disingenuous to the fantasy genre. That is very shallow of me, but I used to actually think that like I wasn't bothered uh, writing in that type of way. But now that I'm older, I see the lack of Islamic or Muslim um, themed things in general, especially in the fantasy community, for books and for movies and for games as well, especially, even though like Assassin's Creed kind of touched on it. Um, but I see a lack of that, and I see how medieval stories like perpetually portray Islam as the enemy or portray brown people as an enemy. That that kind of rubs me the wrong way now. And now I really try and kind of seek inspiration from my own background, kind of as a wish fulfillment, but also just because I know that there's such a lack in it in the community, and I would like to have stories which actually look and believe like me, like how I do. And yeah, so right now I'm writing several fantasy stories, kind of in that vein, um, I'm trying to anyway. So I might touch up on that and share some stuff. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not sure what topic to do after this. So if you have any recommendations, you can just comment them and I'll look into that as well. So yeah, thank you for coming and listening to this rant, or basically to this like mini lecture on Narnia and fantasy and on Islam as well. So hope you have a good day or the rest of the day. So yeah, Asalaamu Alaikum and bye.